Charmine Jefferson, welcome to an intimate conversation with women of color. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous today. It's a beautiful day in the city of Detroit in March. It was nice. I didn't have to have my jacket on, so that was a beautiful day.
I know, right? The D whoop whoop whoop. This morning when I was walking at Palmer Park, I had on like a long sleeve shirt, and then I had a hoodie on top of that, and it was a
Hmm.
bit hot,
Hmm.
and I was okay with that. I kept it on. I said I'm going to keep it on, and sweat a little bit. So yes, it
Hmm.
is absolutely a beautiful day here in the D.
Yes, and we know it's changing in another week, so
Girl,
we
when is
got
it
to
going to
soak
in
it up
another week? Is it going
today.
back cold?
Yeah, it's gonna be getting cold. Yeah, but if not in the beginning of the week, like towards the end of the week. And it's funny because I told my daughter I ordered me a new pair of UGG boots, and she said, "Why you order those? And we going in the spring?" I said, "Well, first because I wanted them, and then
Right.
second, we know we might get snow in April." I said,
That's
"I'm sure
true.
I'll get at least one wear out of those boots before I have to put them away."
And you know what, honestly, nowadays, if you want to wear those boots.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you didn't buy them for the snow
No,
anyway.
right, because you don't wear them in the snow. You wear them for when it's a cold day. So we know we're gonna have some of those between now and the 1st of May. But like
Okay.
consistent warm weather is pretty far away right now.
All
But it's
right.
coming. We got to take these little hits when we get them.
Right. Just enjoy when it's beautiful and sunny and warm, and then just know that it will change with the
Yeah,
quickness, and
yeah.
that's just how it is.
Yes, I keep my hat in my car just in case if it gets cold or if I get it wrong. Because you can have a warm day today and
Right.
then think the next day you're like, oh, I'm wearing my light jacket, no hat, and you get out there and it's freezing.
Yeah.
You
And you know
know,
what? Even within the same day, we know that. So
yeah,
there's that.
absolutely.
So, listeners, our guest is LaCharmine L.A. Jefferson. I call her LJ. So she's going to have to tell us what the LA is about. She is a writer, author, and blogger. LJ, again, as I call you, tell us more about you.
Well, I am a mother of two. I'm a recent grandmother of one.
Yeah.
Beautiful baby girl just turned 8 months a couple of weeks ago, and just a different kind of love, as everyone has says when you get into that grandmother love. And but I'm a new school grandmother because I've been a widow now for 3 years. So I've accepted my singleness, and part of accepting your singleness is you know doing what single women do. We have to take our time to pamper ourselves and hang out a little bit to maybe make some connections. So I can't be the grandmother that keeps the baby every single weekend. But I tell my daughter, I'm gonna give you two. You're gonna get 2 weekends a month. Ask me to keep her, and I've got her. And then I'm just busy. Being a grandmother today, we're younger grandmothers than our grandmothers were, generations ago. So we're still busy. We're still managing careers and, managing whatever our side things are going on. So we don't just have time to, sit up and keep babies
Right,
as
exactly.
cute as they are. We've got things to do.
Right. Well, good for you. And that's awesome that she knows up front. You got 2 weekends and that's
Two
it. So
weekends.
figure the rest out.
Yes, yes. I'm busy writing. I'm writing a lot more. I'm a graduate student right now as well. I'm pursuing a degree in library science, and I'm
Okay.
almost done. I'll be finished with that program at the end of the year. But when I first started the program, and just like when I had been involved in other things, I had a habit of putting my writing way on the back burner when I was doing other things. And I would literally write when I can, so if it was a hour here, hour there. But now I've been really consistent with my writing. Like the schoolwork is important, yes, but the writing, that's a part of me,
Yeah.
that's in me, and that's the bigger picture. So I make sure that I'm writing consistently, even though I'm still a student, so queen of multitasking, but I've definitely learned to make that writing important so that I can not just write, but also be productive and finish things.
Yes, yes, you definitely have to finish things. And so with the writing, that's kind of how we were connected, or that's kind of what solidified our relationship. So
Hmm.
I think that we first met probably in around 2012, 2013, when I
Hmm.
was leading a health awareness committee. And somehow we got connected. It could have, I think it may have been through the president of the employee group at the time. And you shared with me, because I don't think you have written a book yet, but you shared with me that you were aspiring to be an author. And I'm like, oh, I got something for you.
Yes, you did.
Right, right. And so you started helping with the monthly communication that we were sitting out, as well as our online presence as well. And so since then, you have definitely flourished and become an author, right? A
Yeah.
published author. I actually have two of your books here.
Look at those books. Okay. Yes.
So yes, and I definitely wanted to shout out. And so before we actually get into like the conversation, I know you did something the other day, yesterday, with reconciliation to hell. So what did
Yes.
you do?
I was a guest with the Detroit Rotary Club,
Okay.
and the Detroit Rotary Club, they have a literacy campaign, and so literacy is one of their projects, that they commit time to every month. So every month they feature an author, giving them that space to discuss their book and just discuss the craft of writing, and also maybe make some book sales. And so yesterday I was that author.
Very good.
Yeah,
Congratulations. So
thank
congratulations on
you.
that. Congratulations. It's so many things to congratulate you on. So the master's program, the baby, because she is adorable. And I see, when you're sharing that. And also really, I would say more importantly, for taking care of you. You know,
Yeah.
you lost your husband 3 years ago. And it was a devastating time.
Yeah,
And so now, you are making sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you're continuing to live life. And then
mhm.
also from that, you have something that you haven't launched yet, but you're working on something else. And what is that?
That is a podcast.
Okay.
And it is a podcast. It's entitled Conversations with Widows. And we have such an interesting story because my partner in this podcast is actually my cousin in law. She was married to my cousin, and my cousin passed away like 6 months before
Mm,
my husband passed away. And she's a few years younger than me. But when my cousin passed, like, he was younger than me, I don't even think he was 40 at the
mm,
time, and I was just devastated. And she and we were not really friends at that point. Like, I went to their wedding, 5 years before, and then I got a picture from them when their son was born. But she and I had never really connected. I saw her, I met her at the wedding, and it was weird. We were kind of kindred spirits. Like, both of us, when we became widows, we were both out there looking for support, with this
mm,
widow journey. And we happened to go on Meetup, and there was this widow group that was coming up. They were having a meeting, and I saw her name, and I was thinking, Tanya Wilson. I know that name, but I didn't place it with that
right.
Tanya Wilson. And so I went to this meetup specifically to see if this was, like, how did I know this person? And then I go into this, we met at a restaurant, somewhere, I think it was in Ferndale or so. And so I sit down, and, we're talking, participating in the widow group. And when I sat down, she didn't recognize me. But as we spoke about our different journeys of how we became widows, when I told my story, I found out from her later, she was thinking, that story sounds familiar, And so after the meeting, we connected, and I said, yeah, so you were my cousin's wife. And, we befriended each other. And I had been talking about doing a YouTube video at first. I wanted to do a YouTube channel entitled Life After. And I
Mm,
had recorded a couple of videos, but I wasn't being very consistent with it, because sometimes it's hard when you are sharing those intimate, parts of your life, and if you're really going to share that stuff, you've got to share the good stuff and
yeah,
the bad. You
right.
can't just come on with your motivational messages, because people need to know this is a hard journey. You're going to have some times when you don't even want to get out of bed, especially early on. And even when you get, deeper into the journey, like they say, it goes in waves, things just hit you sometimes, so when I do things, sharing things on social media, I'm always thinking about, like the family and the friends, the people I work with. And it's like, oh, they're going to see this video. So that kind of held me back with doing a lot of those videos. But as she and I, just continued to talk about our journeys, and, she kept saying, you got to do a podcast, you got to do a podcast. And I would be thinking, girl, I'm writing a book.
Right.
I'm trying to write these stories. I'm in school, but she stayed on top of me. And then, it became a joint thing. It was like, we need to do this podcast. And so I love the fact that we're doing it together, because she keeps me accountable. I can't drop the ball when I have a partner, and so she's very vested into this. So she's just a great partner. Like, you and I were talking offline about the using Canva.
Yes.
She's the bomb with that, and so like when she has downtime, at her job, she'll use her breaks and play around with Canva, and she's just created some awesome things. And when I think about if I was doing that by myself, I'd be like, oh, I would still be working on that, trying to try to do that one design, because my mind is always on all these different things. So I'm really blessed to have her, to be helping out with that. So
Absolutely.
I'm so excited about when we get ready to release this podcast.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you, and I love what you're learning, right? The timing, that it is, better together, and that you two are on this journey together. You were looking for support, and so you found one another to continue, right? To continue as you grow in the journey. So just thinking about, what you've shared, what you've gone through, your writing, getting to this place of having a podcast. You're having or created that podcast to use your voice, right? So to use your voice to make a difference and impact other people, and to share the journeys that you're on as women who have lost their husbands. So why is it important for women of color, for women widows, to have a platform to use their voices?
That makes me think about, there's a Chicken Soup for the Soul book coming out in June. And that book is entitled, I'm Speaking Now.
Okay.
The call for submissions for that book was specifically for Black women. Because this is our time.
Yes.
It's kind of like the world is looking for what Black women have to say. And Chicken Soup for the Soul knows that. And because this is only the second book in the history of their books that they have dedicated to the voice of Black women, and I'll just do a plug. I submitted a story for that book, and it's going to be published in the book in June. And it's just important to use our platform while the eyes and ears of this country and other countries are looking at us. So if you have a platform, whether it's writing or whether it's radio, whatever it is, I wrote down some names for some powerful people just in different industries. You have Rosalind Brewer, African American woman, just became the CEO of Walgreens. We have Amanda Gorman, did that fantastic poem, at the inauguration. Then we have our directors, Regina King, sharing our stories. Who can tell our stories better than us? And these are Black women that are unafraid to put themselves out there, tell a different story about Black women than what we have been used to seeing a lot of times. So that's why I think it's very important to use that platform while it's here.
Absolutely. And you definitely named some powerful women, but I want to kind of touch on the first one you mentioned, because she's from Detroit. She's from the D. She graduated from the most famous high school in Detroit, Cass Tech.
Cass Tech.
Right? You're an alum as well, right?
I'm an alum, yes. I know she's an AKA too. I forgot that detail.
She's an AKA. Yeah. And so So definitely wanted to make sure people knew that, that,
Yes, yes,
Black women were doing a thing, and Detroit Black women,
that's
Black
right.
women from Detroit, we are really making it happen, because that's huge. The stage that she's on now, and
Yeah,
even just looking at her journey from Walmart to Starbucks and to where she is now, amazing. And it's something that little Black girls can
yeah,
look and say, I can be there.
I
I
can
can do
do that.
that. Like,
Yeah.
she grew up in Detroit and inner city, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
Detroit. She grew up, she went to a public school, and
Mm-hmm.
now look at what she's doing. And then kept it Black, right? Because she went to Spelman.
Yes,
you
yes.
know?
And we need so much of that because the world, is just so anti-Black.
Yeah,
It's like the way the media portrays us, it's just terrible. It's like, man, they act like this is all that we do. Like our neighborhoods are all filled with crime. I would tell people I live in, a suburb of Southfield right now. But when I lived in Detroit, when I grew up in Detroit all of my life, I was not a victim of crime. At one time, I think I may have had my wheels were stolen. But that was once in
yeah,
like 20 years, whereas because of the way that Detroit is portrayed and a lot of inner cities are portrayed, it's like crime is just everywhere. Everybody's a victim. We're afraid to walk the streets and we can't live normal lives. But
yeah,
people are living and they're thriving and they're doing great things.
yeah, absolutely. And and so there's so much with that, right? And when you think about, when you hear Black this or Black that, only when they're talking about people of color do they call out the race, the
Mm-hmm.
ethnicity, right? And so then you become the mindset that, oh, that's happening a lot in the Black community, it's happening a lot in the Hispanic community, et cetera. But there's so much that's happening in the white community, but no one calls out white, no one says white,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
so what you hear is, when they say Black, when they say Muslim, when they say Latino, et cetera, those are the things that stick out to you, because that's when they call out. They don't call out the majority,
They don't.
right? They do not call out the majority. And so folks are not realizing that those things are happening in, larger
Mm-hmm.
numbers, in those
In other communities as
communities,
well.
right? Absolutely. And it's all by design, right? That's
Right.
a whole nother story, but it's all by design. And so for us to continue using our voices to speak up,
Mm-hmm.
to elevate one another, that's what we have to continue doing. So then shifting into, and I'm really curious how you're going to answer this, because you've already shared so much that you're doing, but how specifically are you using your voice for Black women, and even we can say for widows, other than what we've already talked about?
Wow. Well, the main way I use my voice in a multiple ways. The main way being through my writing. I've written, the two fiction novels that you have. But one of the things that's important in my writing is that um, I write about women that look like you and I, that have the kind of experiences that you and I have and other women have. I like to show these women overcoming challenges in their relationships, be it family relationships, romantic relationships, um, conversations with spirituality, demands, work-life balance. My characters are good women, they're strong women. They have flaws, they make mistakes, yet their journey is about growth and overcoming those obstacles with the support of good friends and the self-determination, to overcome. I want to be a direct contrast to a lot of what the media shows us. We have so many popular shows that are showing Black women in a
Mhm.
negative light, and we're entertained by that. Some of us are entertained by that, but it keeps Black women looking very bad. You know, it keeps us in a bad taste, especially when it comes to how we relate together. How our friendships are. We're not all backstabbing, women and, trying to bring everybody down. We're uplifting to each other. So my goal with my writing is to show women in the light that is often ignored by the media. And other things that I write creative nonfiction, such as the story that's going to be published in Chicken Soup for the Soul. But I also blog, and I like to blog about, my life, and I like to talk about things that are going on. We had marches, in addition to it being Women's Month, it's also National Reading Month, so I've been showcasing myself, reading and trying, bringing light also to other African American books, because if we don't read our books, who is going to read our books? And we need our children to read our books, and then our children need to see us reading our books. I had a young lady on one of my Facebook groups. She was an African American woman. She wrote a book. She had written a couple of books, and a white woman commented on her and gave her a review, said that she loved her books, but she will not read any more of her books because she's a Black woman, and she does not support any Black books of any kind. So it's like, despite the fact that you're saying these books were good, but because you found out this woman was a Black woman, you're not going to be supporting her.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that happen to? That's how people view African Americans, because we're so negatively represented, in this country as the troublemakers, that's how they represent us. And for this woman to say that to somebody whose books she enjoyed,
right?
Like, how do you do that? So I just make a point, to make sure that I'm spotlighting other African American authors, in addition to, publicizing, my own work. And the other thing that I do, like I said, doing the podcast, and I'm also just speaking out on issues, that are going on, and trying to just show a good side to people, just being positive. And when it comes to the widows, I contributed to a book. So I guess my writing is really it for me.
Yeah.
The podcast is good. I like to talk, so doing interviews and things like that is really good. But my writing, that's my gift, and so I'm using it as best I can. I didn't mention this, but like, I wrote a book. I'm going to be in this anthology, for widows, and it's about showing the resiliency of widows. We want new widows, because unfortunately with COVID-19, the number of widows that are joining, the ranks has quadrupled, just exponentially, with the deaths that have occurred, during this pandemic, so we want to try to show these women that there's light at the end of that tunnel, so
I love it.
Going to be released in June too. So I was like, man, June is going to be a busy month in June.
I love that. I love that you're tapping into your gift, right? And especially about supporting other authors, Black authors, Black women authors. I was listening to a podcast. Actually, it's no longer a podcast. She does LinkedIn Live now. So my favorite podcaster. So folks who listen, they know it's Minda Harts. Okay. but Minda now does LinkedIn Live. And so I was listening to one, I believe it was from last week, and was saying the person she was talking to had a new book, and made sure to plug that. She kept plugging it throughout and saying how she was going to drop the link so that others could purchase, and how she buys books left and right, because the publishing houses and folks need to know that we write books and we buy our books, right? And we have something to say, and we're saying it through writing, we're saying it through our books, and so to support one another. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And what you shared about the one woman, I mean, that's the audacity, right? That's what happens.
And what's interesting, like combining, my going to school for library science, I wanted to go to school. I'm a lifelong learner, and that's like, I just want to, I'm like, oh, okay, my company pays for this, I'm going to get another degree,
right?
And maybe have this work for me in another way. If I happen to leave the company that I work for, I'll have something else, to fall back on. And I chose this program because I love books. I love libraries. So I'm like, that would be kind of cool to work in the library. But when I started doing my classes, I took a class. One of my courses was called Multicultural Collection and Materials. That course opened my eyes up to the whiteness of the publishing industry.
Mm.
And also the whiteness of the profession of librarianship. And I knew that was the case because you think, living in the city of Detroit, when you go to the public libraries in the city of Detroit, you'll see African Americans, as patrons. You will see them behind the desk, but a lot of times the librarians are actually white people. They're Caucasian, and they keep trying to get Black people, to come into the programs, and other underrepresented persons. But it's something that goes on with this industry where it's still remaining primarily white women. So I think it's very odd also that they have you can't get an undergraduate degree in librarianship. It's a master's program, so that right there, the fact that you're making, in order to get this job, you have to have a master's degree. That right there can be a hardship, for underrepresented people, when you have the hardship of going to school just to get your bachelor's degree, let alone a graduate degree. And so then also we talked a lot about in that class how white the publishing industry is. I had no idea that there were non-Black people writing books with Black characters for us. But yet when we write the book, you won't publish our book, but you'll publish the book by a non-white person. So there's this campaign in the publishing industry, and also just with libraries, that's called #OurVoices, and it's pushing, our voices to tell our stories.
Yes.
I can't write a book about, even though we see Caucasian life all over, everything, but I wouldn't tell a story about a young white girl because that's not my story. So they surely can't tell a story about a young Black girl and tell it authentically. But yet the publishers, because, it's like 80-90% Caucasian in these publishing houses, and that's who they'll publish those books. So that's another reason why I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to graduate in this program and I'm going to make a difference in this program.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Good for you. But the key word that you said is authentically, authenticity, right? And so they haven't really wanted to hear our voices. But now they do. And so now there's space made for us and there's room. And, as you said earlier, we just have to take advantage of it because this is our time. And even when the, the whole, I don't know what we'll call it, we'll just say it's popular now, right? It's the thing now. Even when that dies down, we have to keep at it, right? And we have to keep at it because, like, I talked about Minda. Minda was doing what she's doing before everything that happened with George Floyd, before the murder of George Floyd, when that's really, I was a catalyst. I just opened the world up to our experiences. She was doing what she was doing before then.
But it had been happening. We had seen those videos. But what's so interesting is that it's just interesting that the world happened. The world was stopped. So that's what really brought it out there, because you have more than just a small minority of people that saw this video. This is like the world.
This was the world.
Yep. And it's sad that it had to take that. Definitely all the.
And then, and other than Minda, so you have Issa Rae, who was doing her thing, before, right? She's, like, oh, okay, I'm creating my own space. I'm creating my own tables. Lena Waithe doing the same thing. We all know Tyler Perry did it, right? He's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go over here. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many of us that were already doing it. Now is a time when even more of us can. And we need to go ahead and take advantage of that. So for those women who don't yet recognize the power of their voices, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, like, any gift that we possess, I would tell them, you use it or you lose it. You only have so much time, to walk this earth. And it's our responsibility to be impactful to others. Women, we're heading families, we're leading organizations, we're leading teams, churches, we're making movies, we're writing music. This is our time to make our voices heard. This is not the time to sit back and be quiet. Whether you use your voice by speaking up to a concern going on in the world, that's not the when things happen, and sometimes we don't want to address it because we don't want to be controversial and things like that. Make your post, make your voice known. And then I say, when it comes to Facebook, I've known so many people that get off of Facebook, because they're tired of arguing with people. And I'm thinking, why are you arguing with people?
Right.
Post what you want to post. If they comment, you don't have to respond to their comment. I say it's the principle of ignore. I told my daughter, the power of ignore. Just ignore it, but you can say what you have to say. You don't have to engage in the negativity, but it's just our responsibility, it is. So it took me, when the George Floyd thing came out, actually, what the first thing that happened before George Floyd, what was the guy, Aubrey? I can't remember his name.
Arbery.
When that happened, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this is unreal. And then the George Floyd thing happened. So it really took me a minute before I responded to it, through the avenue that I do with my writing. And I had been seeing a lot of people post blogs, and I didn't really want to do it at the time, but I was like, you know what, LaSharman, you can't not speak. You have to make a statement, some kind of statement, to make your position known, because silence is deafening.
Yes.
Yeah, so you got to use your voice.
Silence is loud, right? It's real loud, right? It's complicit, it's complicity. And so I love that you talked about your writing, right? As far as using your voice, because when I talk about using your voice, is any form of expression. So whether it's talking, whether it's writing, it could be singing, it could be dancing. So, it's any form of expression. So absolutely, our gifts, we have different gifts. Tap into that gift and, and share it with the world.
Yeah.
So, my sister, so I don't know if you had ever met her, but I do know that you knew she was an author, right? And I remember one time, you were sharing some things with me about people supporting, family members supporting authors and whatnot. And she wrote a book, Dreams Deferred. And that book made me think about, is there a dream that I'm delaying? And so I wanted to make sure that I bring it up and have a conversation about it in case there are other people who have deferred dreams. So have you had a deferred dream? And if so, what did you do or what are you doing about it?
Well, I have a story. When I think about dreams, I think about when I was 19 years old, pregnant with my daughter, and my boyfriend, soon to be husband, we went to tell the news, to his mother, tell her, that we were expecting, like she was about to be so happy. Here are these two, recent high school graduates. We're like, oh yeah, we're having a baby. And she responded, like most mothers would, like, what you did what? And one of the things that she said, and it was a defining moment in my life, I sat there and she looked at me, even though the conversation was for both of us, she looked at me and she said, broken dreams, broken dreams. And I was thinking, does she think I'm not going to accomplish in my life what I want to accomplish? And at that time, as a 19-year-old, the dream was to go to school. I had every intention of finishing school. And so I I let those words kind of fuel me. And I pursued my education. Even when I was, married with my daughter, we had moved to Hawaii. I registered for school at the University of Hawaii. When we came back home, I went back to school at Detroit College of Business, and I attained that dream of finishing my undergraduate degree. And then I surpassed it by pursuing my graduate degree. And then when God put the desire to write in my heart, I pursued that as well. And I refused to let anything keep me from doing what I wanted to do. Now because I was a mother and at sometimes a single mother and at sometimes discouraged in my dream, because even when you are, pursuing your dream, there are times of discouragement. Sometimes I like to always talk about artists, we can be the most insecure people, because you've got the story or you've got the song or you wrote a movie and it's like, oh, will they like it? Will they like
Right.
it? Will the people like it? And you just want to keep it to yourself, but it's like, no, so we have a lot to overcome when it comes to putting out there, what you want to put out there. And I said that the path, to getting even where I am now, it's been a long path, but everything is all in God's timing.
Yes.
And because I know when my mother, when I had made her known, that I wanted to be a writer, she kind of was like, well, okay, but you got this child to take care of, like that's first things first, and I felt like what she was telling me was that I need to put writing to the side, raise my daughter, and pick the writing up when my daughter was grown. And I was thinking, that's going to be like 20 years. I'm like, am I not supposed to write for 20 years?
Right.
Until, I was like, that didn't sit right with me, So no, I didn't like do a lot of engagements because my mother did, drill that into me. My daughter was my first responsibility, so I was writing, but I wasn't necessarily pursuing the career in terms of, trying to book events and things like that, because I always wanted to be available for what my daughter needed me to be available for, but I never stopped writing and I never stopped pursuing the dream,
Yeah.
so dreams, no, I think I've been doing good with that.
Right. And the thing about it is deferred just means delayed, right?
Yep.
It's not denied and you haven't given up on it. So I mean, that's a beautiful journey for you to share because that's what we talked about. So we've been talking for a while and the entire conversation really has been about writing. It's
Mm-hmm.
been around writing. You've said it. That's who you are. It's a part of you. And so for you to share that story, right, about what you were told 20 plus years ago, to put something on hold, what you need to take care of first, and then it's something that never left you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have two of your books. You just you just talked about a compilation that's coming out in June. You talked about being in Chicken Soup for the Soul. That's huge, right?
Oh,
So
huge.
it's timing. We already said that. We said timing. We said, God's plan. So that's something that's very encouraging to our listeners. So thank you for sharing that story.
I
So
do
before,
want to say one more thing about that because when I got married and my to my late husband, that was a very challenging relationship, and then he got sick, so I became a caregiver, and now that I'm in this place of having all this time to myself, I've never had all this time to myself like I do now. I have a 16-year-old son, but that's totally different from a 16-year-old daughter. It's like night and day from him and my daughter. He's upstairs, I'm downstairs, we see each other in passing, so I'm by myself a lot. And that really has opened up, it's it's opened up just something that I just never even dreamed, because it's kind of like I always wanted more time to write. And
yeah.
it's like now I have all this time to write. And I'm like, man, I can just do all the writing that I want to do now, So it's like you got to just be patient, for your time to come. But whatever it is that
Oh
you
yes.
really want to do, just know it's coming.
I love that. I love that. And it's all part of the journey, right? It's something to talk about because you even said it in the beginning about things that you've gone through. And that's what I say about myself with this whole thing with the podcast. It's all a journey, right? So I can say today it's almost a year. So I'm almost celebrating a year in this podcast journey. Thank you. But I can look back at day one, and I can think about, well, this is what I said and this is what I had planned and what was going on day one. But now fast forward and look at things. But again, it's a process and it's something for me to talk about. For me to say, well, this, we were talking earlier and I was saying how I'm part of the WOC podcasters and then the insiders group and what I've learned through them, right? Imagine if you start something, you launch something and it's perfect. Well, what's the lesson in that? How do you teach that to somebody else to duplicate that? Right. You can't. Right. And so the thing is, there are some of us who our path is to teach, to motivate, to lead, to be an example for others. And so for us, that's our path. It's not going to be just all roses when we launch, right? It's not going to be just, it's polished right away, because our path is to show other people, to bring them along. Now, mind you, there's nothing wrong with when you launch as like beautiful and look like you put $1 million into it. Nothing's wrong with that. And that has its purpose as well. But that's not me. That's not the path that I'm on. And so I accept that. And and I look at my life and I appreciate things that I've experienced because it makes me who I am and it's brought me to where I am today. And again, I can tell people. And people are watching, right? People are watching. They may not ever say anything, but they're watching and they're being inspired. And so that was what was put in me. That's what God put in me, because forever, everything that I've done, a lot of what I've done is like I've shared with other people to inspire them. Like, hey, this is what I'm about to do, and then make moves to make that happen. And they're watching and they're like, oh my God, because of that thing you started, I went and got my degree. Or I started this business, or whatever it is that they did, right? So I appreciate my journey. I'm good with my journey.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I wanted to say who he is, but when you say someone got their degree because they were watching you, I actually had a friend of mine, longtime friend of mine, said to me that when I told him that I was in the Chicken Soup for the Soul, he was calling me to congratulate me on that. And then he said, you have always, been in pursuit of what you want to do. And he gave me the credit for inspiring him to pursue his master's degree. And he said, I was the first person in his circle of friends that had done it. And he and I can't remember if we were in a relationship at the time, but he never said like, oh, that is so good that you are pursuing this degree. I didn't think it meant anything because I was like, I'm just doing it. But it felt so good. Just I had no idea, that I inspired him to get his degree.
Isn't that beautiful?
Like you said, people are looking at what you're doing.
Always.
They may not tell you, but a lot of people are inspired.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are. And as a matter of fact, so I posted in the LinkedIn community yesterday something to that, because I logged onto LinkedIn the other day and I saw a picture of a panel that I was on. And so they used it for Women's History. And this particular handle has over 1 million followers.
Wow.
So the thing with that is how I got there, and which is what I was sharing in the point of the post is, so when I met last year, we connected. She's in the Facebook group. So she's in our Intimate Conversation Facebook group, watching what I'm doing. So seeing my journey. And when she was putting together this panel, she was like, oh, you're perfect for this. I've watched you.
Wow.
I'm seeing you, making these moves. And so I want you to be a part of this. And the panel was actually for Black History Month. So again, met her. She's seen me grow. She had me be a part of a Black History Month panel, which was featured for Women's History Month. Again, this handle has over 1 million. So you never know where you're going to be. You never know where your path takes you. And again, who's watching, because there's always somebody watching. So just make sure that you're, being true to yourself. We talked about authenticity. Make sure you're your authentic self, and keep doing what you're doing. And so, I just mentioned this Women's History Month. You brought it up earlier. So who, and other than the women you mentioned, so other than Rosalind Brewer and Amanda Gorman and others, who has had the most impact on your life?
Give that some thought. Right now, who comes to mind is Stacey Abrams.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I'm gonna say why Stacey Abrams. I'm reading her book, How to Build Your Future and Make Real Change. And when it's really hard. I can't get through this book, like in a couple of days, because she's dropping such nuggets in the book, So when I'm reading it, I have to like just digest.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like making notes, and I'm like, nobody else can read.
Right.
Nobody can read. I can't loan this book to anybody, because I'm like highlighting, flagging pages, but her message that she had, it confirms something that I always thought. And it's that we're not necessarily just meant to do one thing. We're not just good at one thing. We're good at many things, and everything has its time and its season. I was floored by the fact, that she wrote some romance novels,
right?
Romantic suspense novels.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, but wait, you're this political person.
Right.
You want to be the governor of Georgia, and but you wrote some books, But what she says in her book, she's saying that, we're multi-talented, and everything that you want to do, you don't have to do it. You don't have to commit to doing it for the rest of your life.
Right.
You have to do it for the time that you're meant to do it. So whether you are teaching right now and you decide to, I've taught for 10 years, I want to do something different. Who says you got to be a teacher until you, retire?
Right.
If you want to do a different, profession, why not? So I listen to her because, as a creative person, I'm often looking for a lot of different creative outlets.
Yes.
So I got a sewing machine, and, I try to sew. I'm not really good at it because it's a learning curve, but that does not stop me from trying. And that doesn't mean that, maybe one day when I get my books written and I'm taking a break. I really don't know when I'm going to take a break from writing, because I seem to keep, there's always ideas coming, but I'm like, I got that sewing machine for the day when it's my time to actually start a project, finish a project. I also love to bake, so baking, I could start a baking business on the side if I want to. I don't have to just stay in this lane.
Right, absolutely.
All I do is write, so that's the biggest thing that I love about what her message is, that you just have to overcome those fears, that you have, get to the bottom of them, but you have to do what you want to do, even if you're doing it scared.
I love all of that. Just listening to what you're saying, I'm thinking about my own journey. So when I moved to Vegas, so back in 2009, I prayed to learn what my purpose and passion was. And after getting there and meeting some folks and going to our employee resource group conference, I'm like, oh, diversity and inclusion. There it is. I want a career in diversity and inclusion, or what's today community engagement. And so over the next 5 years, I was doing the work. I had my job, I was doing that, on the side, kind of as you talked about, but they all start to integrate, right? So it's all part of everything is all together. But, and then moving back to Detroit, being home for like 3 years, and then it finally happened for me. And I'm like, I'm good, I'm great, this is it. This is what I've been waiting to get to. And then through this, I created a panel. So part of my job, created a panel for this event, did that panel for 3 years. And this podcast is actually an iteration of that. So I say from panel to podcast, and that's where I'm at. Now it's about everything that the podcast is.
Mm-hmm.
So, podcast, Facebook group, LinkedIn community. I'm sure I'm missing something there, but it's grown, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's the next level to things,
Yeah.
right? And
Absolutely.
so for me, it's just leveling up different levels of it. And I'm loving this whole journey. Who knows where it will take me, right? And I'm just here being, I'll just obedient to it, if you will, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
rolling with it. Like, okay, cool. Where does this take me? What do you want me to do next, right?
Uh-huh.
And I also think about, I was listening to one of my other favorite podcasters, Stephen A. Hart. He was talking to this woman, and I'll have to look her up, but she created Impact Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was talking about how that started. So really it started through church, right? So
Mm-hmm.
she was, lifting up community members, then had a digital, then I think became print. And then from there, she's like, and she made this decision maybe last year, COVID, because it was perfect timing for that. But she's like, oh, I want my own like network. And so launched off into that.
Yeah, we have to have that mindset, like there is no limit to what I want to
No,
do except me. Like you're your own
exactly.
limitation when you don't kill that self-doubt in your head that tells you you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
No. You just got to keep podcasting, or you just got to keep, writing novels. You can't start being a speaker because you're not a speaker, you're a writer. But no, I can be a speaker and a writer, So we got to learn how to kill the self-doubt,
Absolutely.
that comes in our head.
And you can write a book about sewing. So
Maybe that's what I need to do.
exactly, right, right. So yeah. So as we begin to wrap, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I want to first say to you, so I don't forget while we're on this platform right now, you were my mentor. I still consider you to be my mentor. You said something to me years ago, and I've never forgot it. And it was, when opportunity comes, take it and figure it out.
Oh yeah, yes, yes.
So I have been doing that, and I've been doing it more and more, and doing it afraid, when I have my anxiety, about, public speaking or having the focus on myself. That has never been a comfortable space of mine. I mean, I could tell you, if I was to do a book talk on some other book that I read, and I'm like, oh, cool, this is great. She's a great author. But when I
Right.
have to do that for myself, I'm like, oh, goodness. But I'm growing. And I always credit you for that,
Oh,
for imparting that advice to me, just to take the opportunity and figure it out. That has led to so much that has been going on with me. So pat yourself on the back.
oh,
Or look, virtual high five.
oh, I love it, because you know what? So here's the thing with that, is that's exactly what we were just talking about, right? Just talking
Mhm.
about, because this is our path. This is the path that we're supposed to go for that very reason, right? For me to pour into somebody, to invest into somebody, and for you, and to be able to do all these things because of something that I said, that's huge. That's simply amazing. And it's also something that I referenced in that the LinkedIn communication that I was just talking about, because
Mhm.
there's three things I said, there's three things that I learned from this, and one being to say yes. And so what I shared with you was me paraphrasing a quote of Richard Branson, who is the CEO and founder of Virgin Atlantic, so the airlines and
Oh,
records and
okay.
all of that.
Mhm.
So it's when an opportunity presents itself, and you don't really know how to do it, just say yes and kind of figure it out. And so my paraphrase is, opportunity presents itself, say yes and figure it out. So pretty much what you said, that's what I've also kind of lived off of. So yay, thank you for
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
that. Oh,
absolutely. And I would like to, leave the people with, live your life like you have an audience that's watching,
ooh,
because you do have an
you
audience
do.
that's watching, and if you're doing the right things, you're going to be inspiring generations to come. You're going to be inspiring your sister to your left, your sister to the right, the young girl, behind you, that she might think your hair is pretty. She might like all, different things about you, but it's going to be the things that you're doing that's really going to stick, so do the right thing and know that you have an audience.
Well, look at that. Look, let me grab this mic real quick and drop it, sis, because that's just what you did. So, LaCharmine, LA, LJ to me, Jefferson, thank you so much for lending your voice on an intimate conversation with women of color. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye.